sometimes they're not going to change completely, right? So, yes, there's a question.
I have an example, like associating some kind of ibadah with specific times, like in the memory of like when the Prophet ﷺ was born. Some people associate it with like Salah al-Nabi or other ibadah.
Yeah, it's called the Mawlid. Yeah. The Mawlid or the Milad or the Mawlud. And this is a big debate these days. Actually, frankly, it wasn't a big debate in the earlier period because it's something that was introduced at some point in time. Some of the scholars felt, actually, you know how that came up. It's because of the Christian, well, one reason is the Christians, the way that they celebrated Isa alayhi salam in the medieval period, the Muslim people started to become excited around Christmas celebrations and actually wanted to like miss school and stuff because the Christians had a great celebration. And they felt that how come they honor their prophet, we don't honor our prophet? We don't have anything to read about him. Because the Prophet ﷺ, interestingly, like, there's no day about him in Islam, like originally. That was his humility. So the scholars said, you know what? Let's, around the time of his birth, Rabi al-Awwal, there's different opinions. Then let's talk about his seerah. Let's give salawat. So it also gives Muslims a chance to get acquainted with the Prophet. Because there's no other holiday that really talks about him. Like there's Eid, Adha, Eid al-Fitr. And that's where that came up. Now, there are some scholars who say that's good. It's very good, do it. And there's some scholars who say, no, that's innovation. The Prophet didn't do it. So where do you stand in between those two kind of extremes? Some people say, like, you gotta do it. Some people say, you cannot do it or, you're out of Islam. Both of those are extreme, right? So this is just one way to approach these questions. Okay, yeah.
Witr.
Which one?
Praying witr.
Witr.
In general during Ramadan.
Yeah.
But in the normal day, we pray witr by himself.
Yes.
Is that the part of innovation?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's fiqh. That's fiqh. So that's from the proper fiqh to pray witr in congregation, ideally, in the Hanafi school, in all of Ramadan, in the Shafi school, in the last part of Ramadan. Yeah. So this is another interesting thing, right? Sometimes you see things that maybe you didn't do, so you think it's an innovation, but actually it's perfectly from the Sunnah, right? So we have to be very careful about whipping out that word. These days, we use the word bid'ah like it's like a baseball bat you're trying to hit somebody over the head with, literally. If you want to bully somebody, you just say you're doing innovation, right? But you have to be very careful about that because you're making a statement about deen. Now, the second hadith, okay, what does it mean that it is rejected? فَهُوَ رَدْ. Rad, what it means, rad does not mean rejected. It means rejection. But out of emphasis, the Prophet said, whoever does something new in this religion that's not from it, it is rejection itself. It's a way of its hyperbole, right? Okay, so it actually means it is rejected, but the literal word that was used was it is rejection itself. Just like how Allah, one of his names, the just, what does that mean in Arabic? Al-Adl. What does Al-Adl mean? Justice. So is somebody named Justice? Like, is Allah's name Justice? Or is it the just?
Yes.
He's so just, he's Adil, that he is justice itself. He's Adil, right? That's the example. That's just an Arabic fine point. And then there's a second hadith. He who does an action which does not conform to our matter, Islam, then it is rejected. Okay, meaning by Allah, by the religion, by Sharia, everything. But this is called, right, this is hadith number 5, but these are two different hadiths. Why did Imam Nawawi bring this second hadith here? Why wasn't the first one enough to talk about innovations? Why do you guys think? Why do you guys think he had to? Why did he bring a second hadith here? It's like, we got the point about innovations from the first one. Emphasis? Well, it's possible, but he's doing all 40 hadith. So every hadith is like very finely picked.
So is it like an action that we perform?
So whenever
there are some concepts and this is an action. That's
okay. That's one thing. Yeah, but both of them are actions. But there's a difference in man amila and man ahdatha. Man ahdatha means whoever did something new. So somebody could say, he wanted to predict the objection or the excuse. Someone say, I didn't start it. Right? Oh, the Prophet said, whoever starts a matter, like Billy Joel says, we didn't start the fire. It's always been burning since it's been burning since the world's been turning, right? Meaning, hey, we didn't start it. So if I continue to do it, it's not my fault. That's why the second hadith, the wording is, whoever even acts an action, not whoever starts it, whoever acts an action that is not conforming to Islam, then it is rejected. So nobody can say, well, we just found my family does this. We're from a family that does this. Our people, our caste or our tribe, our village always does this. We didn't start it, so we're going to continue doing it. That's not an excuse. So he brings the second hadith as an emphasis, but also as a nuance. Okay, as a nuance so that people don't have an excuse to wiggle out of it. So bismillah, let's look at, we talked about the importance of preserving the religion, because if we didn't have this hadith and this concept, Islam would be chained. And I'm telling you, this concept in Islam is one of the most frustrating for the enemies of Islam. It annoys them to no end. Like, why can't you guys modernize? Why can't you just be like us, get with the programs, drop this, drop that? And this is the one hadith, even if you want to conform, it's making you say, I'm sorry, I just don't have a choice. Like why? This is like 2025. Why can't the women pray in front of the men? Like, what's wrong? I'm just like, look, I'm really sorry, I just can't change it. I just can't change it. Even if I wanted, even if I said I agree with you, I think it's a good idea. Why don't we? No, I can't do it. Right? Come on, it's 2025. Like, why do you have to grow a beard? Why do you have to wear hijab? Why do you have to, pork is clean now. Why do you have to avoid pork? Alcohol, whatever it is. We say, absolutely not. We're not changing even a little bit of our religion. Now, there is one thing about natural practice, and that is, as we get dragged through time and the challenges of context and culture, you naturally end up with a few compromises here and there. Okay? You naturally end up with this. I'll tell you, not even 100 years ago, I think 50 years ago, 50 years ago, you would never see men and women in the same room studying like this without some sort of curtain. In fact, we had a choice. Should we put a curtain or should we just make a space? You would never have seen that. So there are things that as time is passing, there is a sense of adaptation that's coming, but it's not something that you try to jump ahead of, to be progressive. Sometimes, I'll give you another example. The idea of using a video. I still have teachers that believe it's haram to even have a video of your lecture plan. Like, you can't even take a picture. They say even your passport photo is haram, but it's because you have to do it, then they do it. It wasn't that long ago that all pictures and images were haram. Now it's kind of like, who thinks about that? Who asked that question? Everybody has accepted it. But there was a time when it wasn't allowed. Did you know that the Quran, initially the scholars did not even approve of printing the Quran? Why? Because you know how things were printed back in the old days? You stamp it. You have to make, I forget what you call that. What's that?
Stencil.
Yeah, stencil, yeah. You'd have to make like a kind of a mold and then stamp. So they said, how can you stamp the Quran in something that's disrespectful, right? So they said, no, don't do that. And, so what's another innovation? The Quran on our phones. This is what I really don't like personally. I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm not trying to upset you. I'm not saying this is a ruling. I don't like when Salah is going on and everyone's like this, right? Why? Because it just changes the look of the prayer. That you walk into a masjid and everyone's just like literally still on their phone. I know you're ignoring the messages. I know, or you got it on silent. But this is But this is an example of how things have progressed and advanced, and the changes are coming despite it being permissible. Because you could say it's permissible to read something according to the Shafi'i school of thought, right? So alhamdulillah, these are all examples of how changes are coming, but we have to try to preserve as much as possible. Okay, the next point, the importance of preserving the religion. And for example, the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? He said, there will be people who will be on the day of judgment, they will be brought to his hawd, the watering pool. And he will be waiting for the believers to come to him. And there will be somebody who comes to him and before they're able to, on the day of judgment, finally embrace the Prophet ﷺ and drink from the hawd, the pool, the angels will start dragging him away. And the Prophet ﷺ will say, what? This person is from my ummah. They'll say, you don't know how he changed the religion after you. You don't know what he did after you were gone. Okay? That's why he said, that what do we say at the beginning of every single Jummah khutbah? We say, Inna asdaqa hadith kitabullah. Wa khayru hadi hadi Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa sharru umuri muhdathatuha. That indeed, the most true speech is the book of Allah. And the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And wa sharru umuri, the worst of matters is newly invented matters. Wa kullu muhdathatin bid'ah. And every single new thing is an innovation. And every single innovation is misguidance. And every single misguidance is kullu dharatin fin nar. It's in the hellfire. We start the khutbah like this every single week to keep in mind. Okay, let's keep going. Intentions alone are not enough. So this hadith is trying to say, sometimes with good intentions, we start things, but intentions are not enough. The action has to also be halal, haram. You can't say, for example, we couldn't go for Hajj, so we just put a cloth around this table, and we called it a Kaaba, and we just decided, like on the day of Arafah, just to like reenact. I'm not talking about little kid play, okay? I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about and even that some people will object. But if we started to do this, like, we just want to feel like we're doing it. That's innovation. So intentions are not enough. You can intend the best of things, and we don't say, Now, the other thing is, following the sunnah and the prophetic way, this is also why it's so important, not just to follow the laws of Islam, the rules, but the way the Prophet ﷺ taught how to live and be. Now, not everything the Prophet ﷺ did you have to do, right? So he wore a turban. You don't have to wear a turban. Covered his head all the time. You don't have to cover your head all the time. But we hang on to these things as sunnahs because it brings us closer to the Prophet ﷺ. And the more that we stay closer to him, the Sahaba, some of the first innovations that they said was happening, they said people have started to grind their bread into fine flour. They're like, in our time we never had that. So they used to actually look at any change from the lifestyle of the Prophet ﷺ as an innovation. So this is why following the prophetic way ﷺ is important. Now, are all innovations the same? No. Not all innovations are the same. So there are some people, some scholars who said innovations are like either the Prophet did it or he didn't do it. But this argument actually does not necessarily hold because the Sahaba also did things the Prophet ﷺ didn't do. They wish they didn't have to do it, but they did to preserve the religion. So this argument people say, well, the Prophet didn't do it. If the Prophet did not do something, it only shows one thing. If the Prophet did not do something, what does that tell us? The only one thing we can know for sure.
Maybe it wasn't required by that.
Then it's not the Prophet. That everything that's fard, he would have done it. So you cannot say the Prophet didn't do this. How can you do this? You can say, okay, does this fall into we have the Sharia now, principles. Anything you bring it according to the Sharia. Does it fit that? This is what the scholars are for. This is why you have to ask the scholars, right? So this is why Al-Izz ibn Abdul Salam in the Shafi'i school of thought, he said, look, innovations are actually 5 different categories. They are either wajib, you have to innovate this. What's an example of a wajib innovation? Quran. Otherwise you're going to lose it. You're going to lose the deen. So it was wajib upon them to make the Quran into one book and to put the vowels in it. Then there could be a mandub or sunnah innovation, meaning it's very good to do. What's an example of something that's good to do as an innovation? Tarawih is very good to do. Or even using a microphone in prayer. I don't know if you guys know, but there was a debate in the last century. Is it halal to even use a microphone in prayer? Right? Can you even stamp the Quran? Can you use a clock? The early scholars opposed the use of clocks. They said, no, we tell our time through natural means, through the adhan. We don't want a clock because it came from some places, not all. Of course, Muslims are also scientific in innovating as well. Let's give an example. And so that's the second ruling, mandub or recommended. And the third one is it's mubah to innovate in it. What's an example of a permissible innovation? There's no sin, there's no good deed. It's just whatever you want to do. That is an example of an innovation that could be good for some people, and for some it might not be good. But I'm talking about, that's an aspect of worship. So whether you eat with a fork or a spoon or a spork, okay, it's not a big deal. Whether you eat on a table or you sit on the ground, it's okay. That's an example of an innovation that's permissible. Whether you ride a camel or you ride a Tesla, it's an innovation. It's fine. You sit on the ground for the toilet, you sit on a whatever, it's fine. So then there's another one that's makruh innovation, where this innovation now, not absolutely haram, but it's leading to something that's not good. Okay, and I don't have that off the top of my head right now.
Social media.
What's that?
Social media.
Social media.
He's halfway from there.
Yeah, I have no idea where that's going to go. AI, in your khutbah. AI khutbah. Okay, like asking AI for fatwas. Like, ChatGPT fatwa. Shaykh Google. So all those things. Now, and then there's innovations that are haram. So when people say bid'ah, meaning every single innovation is a hellfire, what they mean is the fifth category. There's 4 categories above that. Okay? Let's go to another one. So you can be rewarded for some types of innovations, and you can be punished for others. And then others, that doesn't even matter. Right?
So when they say, read, for example, we do the 300 times for 71 days, would that fall under permissible innovation or under haram innovation?
It's actually, it depends who you ask.
Right.
If you ask most mainstream traditional scholars, they'll say that is permissible to do, as long as you don't think it's sunnah or farz.
Got it.
And the minute you do, they're going to start speaking out against it to correct you. Okay? And, and others will say, no, you shouldn't do it. So there's always going to be a spectrum. Okay. Yeah?
I'm going to tell you that if Rasulullah and the Sahaba didn't do something, then why would we want to innovate something? If it was good, they would have done it, so why would we want to come in and start doing something like this?
Yeah, that's a cautious approach to religion. And that's good, that's okay. That's okay. But can you condemn everyone? No. Then you have to look at the Sharia tells us, what's the religious ruling of this? You can no longer say, well, the Sahaba didn't do it. There's many things Sahaba didn't do. I don't know if you know the idea of the Islamic madrasa? When the Islamic madrasa first came out, the scholars were condemning it. Why? What's so wrong about an Islamic university or Islamic madrasa? Why can't you study in a madrasa? What were they condemning? They were saying, learning should take place in the masjid. How can you take people out of the masjid to teach Quran? How can you take people out of the masjid? Because they were like, no, the masjid is the place where you learn. So one thing you'll know about scholars in general, now this also frustrates some people, but it's part of our mechanism of preservation, is that scholars are conservative. Generally speaking, ulama, they are kind of always going to seem behind. Why do they seem behind? Because they don't want to be the first one to open the floodgates to a change. This is why they usually only change when they absolutely have to, because they're afraid of the consequences of changing. So that has its good side and it has its bad side in some senses. Okay, now Islam gives us guidelines, how this hadith is misused and abused. I'm just going to say one point about it because we have to go on. And that is, this hadith is misused and abused because people start to attack other people and excommunicate them from the religion. They took fear of them based on bid'ah. So, okay, you see some people sitting in the mosque doing group dhikr, and you say these people are misguided and they're not even really Sunni Muslims. This is wrong. Okay? Or other people don't say our dhikr and they oppose it. So now they are not Sunni Muslims. Yeah, this happened in the subcontinent. They divided. And it's very unfortunate, right? So, alhamdulillah, we don't have that here at ISOC. And generally speaking, the American Muslim scene, the scholars have been very wise to stop attacking each other. So you'll notice those debates that used to happen in the 90s, this is before I was Muslim, but I heard about them, and I caught the tail end of it in the early 2000s. They've stopped doing that. Scholars are not attacking each other anymore. They're like, you know what, we have more important fish to fry, meaning keeping people in the faith and fighting Islamophobia. Okay, bismillah. Let's get to the next hadith. Let's see if we can pull that off before. We'll go just up to the Iqamah, inshallah. The lawful and unlawful are clear. And this hadith goes, عن أبي عبد الله النعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنهما قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما أمور مشتبهات لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس فمن اتقى الشبهات فقد استبرأ لدينه وعرضه ومن وقع في الشبهات وقع في الحرام كالراعي يرعى حول الحمى يوشك أن يرتع فيه ألا وإن لكل ملك حمى ألا وإن حمى الله محارمه ألا وإن في الجسد المضغة إذا صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب رواه البخاري ومسلم. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't do that. Abu Abdullah An-Nu'man ibn Bashir who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, say, the halal, the lawful and permissible is clear, and the haram, the unlawful, is clear. And between them, between halal and haram, are matters that are unclear, that are unknown to most people. Whoever is careful in these unclear matters has absolved himself in his religion and his honor. And whoever indulges in them, in these unclear matters, has indulged, I'm going to change the translation. And whoever falls in to those things which are unclear or dubious will eventually fall into the unlawful. Okay? And it is like a shepherd who grazes his sheep, his flock, close to a preserved sanctuary of a king. They will eventually fall into grazing it. Every king has a sanctuary, and the sanctuary of Allah is that which He has made unlawful. And there lies a piece of flesh in the body. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. And if it is corrupted, then the whole body is corrupted. Indeed, this piece of flesh is the heart. In Bukhari and Muslim. Guys, huge hadith. Imam Abu Dawood said that all of Islam revolves around 4 hadith, and this was one of the hadith that he said is one of the 4 axial hadiths. Halal is clear and the haram is clear. Basically, there's 3 rulings, is what he's trying to say. The Prophet is what you're getting from the hadith. Halal, haram, and mushtabihat, meaning it's unclear. Either you know something, you can do it, or you can't do it, or it's kind of in the middle. Okay? So, this is the question now. What's an example of something that's halal clear? Drinking water. Alhamdulillah, it's halal. I don't have to check. Go on, Shaykh Google and check. It's something that's clear. Anything where the Prophet, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Prophet said, أُحِلُّ لَكُمَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ, permissible for you are all good things. Right? وَطَعَامُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ, and the food of the people of the book is halal for you. Okay, although there's a great debate around how that's supposed to be slaughtered, or if it's slaughtered at all. But in general, whatever, it's halal. And now, what's an example of haram? Eating pork. Clear. Eating pork. Right? What else? Drinking alcohol. Clear. Here's an example that our commentator gives. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُكُمْ. It is haram for you to marry your mother and your sister and so on. Now, it feels like that doesn't have to be said. Right? It seems like something so obvious. But when the Muslims came to Persia, the Zoroastrians were marrying their sisters and their mothers, so it's not clear to everybody. Okay? It seems like repulsive to us. It should. But when you don't have a deen, you can fall into all kinds of weird stuff. Okay? And so this hadith is saying, halal and haram are very, very clear. Bayyin. It comes from the word bayyina, bayan, clarity. Now, let's get a better translation of this. Now, between the two of them, halal and haram, are doubtful matters. The mushtabihat, shibah, means to resemble something. So if I say, hada yushbih hada, it resembles. It means that thing could resemble halal in some ways, or resemble haram in other ways. So that's why you're unsure, is it halal or is it haram? Because from this side it looks okay. From this angle it looks haram. So now people are stuck. And the Prophet ﷺ said, لَا يَعْلَمُهُنَّ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. Not many people know them. And this is what's hard. What does this imply though? Not many people know them. What does that mean? That there are some people who know them. Who are those people? The ulama. So this is something where when you don't know the answer to a question, you go and ask a scholar. Because there are some things that you're just not going to be able to figure out. Some things you'll know for sure. If somebody, pork and all its variations, like pork, bacon, someone says, this is not pork, it's bacon. It's ham. Like, yeah, no, I'm going to avoid that, right? Because I understand that. But there's some things that may not be clear to everybody, right? Early on, for example, some type of animal like elephant. Is elephant halal to eat or haram to eat? Now you're like looking, and the scholars, they didn't know. They were like, well, we don't have any hadith that said don't eat, Dumbo the elephant. There's nothing that says that. How do you know? So some said, well, because it has tusks, it resembles, a boar. And some said, wait, no, because of this, it's fine, because it's haram. So now what happens? What about elephant milk? Okay, sometimes you get elephant cheese. Like you can go to like these cafes and like get, like a pizza with elephant cheese on it. Can you do that? I know the people eat it as a delicacy. Can you do that? Somebody came asking the other day, can you eat frogs? Can you eat crocodile? So these are things that until the ulama clarify them, they are unclear. Then the ulama clarify them. Now you have other things. Breathable nail polish. Like what is that? What is breathable nail polish? Right? What about lab-grown meat? It's literally not an animal. It's meat that's been cloned in a lab. Can you eat it or can you not eat it? There was a time when people asked me, what about Bitcoin? There's a lot of confusion about Bitcoin. So these things, when new things come up, you're not sure what to do. They even had this question in the fiqh books, like, can you pray on a flying carpet?
Is there a flying carpet?
Well, they believe that there's such thing as a flying carpet. So the ulama had all kinds of thoughts. Can you marry a mermaid? Like these kind of questions did come up. Like they literally, and finally this is all pre-Disney. But you know what it is? The scholars were always thinking. They had like 1,400 years just to think, sit in the madrasa and think of questions. But it really did benefit us sometimes because we can get insight into praying on a plane now, because of flying carpet. So they did sometimes think ahead, and that made us think, hey, like somebody thought of this question, right? So it could be just theoretical and it could be practical. Mermaid one is still but you don't know. You don't know. What about cloning? What about all those other things, right? Surrogate pregnancy. So now, the Prophet says, whoever indulges, right? Man waqa'a fi shubuhat, and shubha is also like a suspicion, Whoever falls in the shubuhat, waqa'a fi haram. Whoever falls into doubtful matters, they fall into the haram. What is that supposed to mean? Why is that?
You can't act without knowledge.
Because they're not sure.
Yeah, because you're not sure. So if you there's two ways that the ulama say this happens. The first one is that you get so comfortable, relaxed in your deen that you start to say, I don't know, so I'm going to do it. I don't know, I'm going to do it. To eventually the point where you just take so many risks in your religion. You take so many risks that you finally end up in the haram eventually. Because you've seen this. The people who make their deen, quote unquote, very progressive, and they're just like, oh, this is new, and then finally they just fall into haram. Okay? Or you're just thinking to yourself, you know what? I'm just going to eat any and everything that comes to me. Anything that comes to me, I'm just going to eat it. And what happens? You just eat everything until one day you're not careful and you end up eating haram. And the other one is, the scholars say, is what it means that if you end up doing too much of the doubtful matters, you end up in the haram. It means that the nur of taqwa in your heart, the light of righteousness and piety, it comes from being firm on your religion. It comes from being having a sense of practice and carefulness and cautiousness. Because if you start compromising, get into funny situations, the nur, the light of faith, goes from your heart little by little until you stop caring if you do haram or halal. So it's not even by accident. You just stop becoming careful in your religion. Okay? What's an example of that in practical modern terms? What's that? Interest? Okay. So, like you deal with doubtful matters. Okay, you start to take all kinds of business deals, and but there's other things too. Yeah.
Gender relations.
What's that?
Gender relations.
100% gender relations. 100%. Okay.
What?
Gender relations. Gender relations. Okay. Yeah. So basically, there's going to be a level of interaction as men and women in our society now we have. But how far can we go with that? How far can we go with that? Right? How far can you interact with somebody? You're polite, you're joking, you're laughing, you're now into very intimate discussions, you're now into secrets, you're now into and pretty soon you end up in some place that you didn't want to end up. Or for example, social media or watching television. Okay? It's so hard to tell people today that you can't watch TV. The original ruling of most scholars, up to now, right? When I studied fatwa, haram to even watch TV. Why? Because it's like, well, can I watch this show? Can I watch that show? Can I watch Harry Potter? Can I do this? And I'll guarantee you, and you might not like to hear this, but I have to speak the truth, even if it's against me, because I do watch some movies with my kids, and even by myself. But no, I'm saying this because I don't want to be a hypocrite. I will say, we compromise. I'm on social media too. There's a compromise. It's not the ideal. Because you're going to watch one thing, and you're going to say, this is okay to watch. Then another thing. And eventually you start getting so used to the haram that it's like, it's nothing anymore. All the swearing, all the nudity, all the magic, all the whatever, you just keep making an excuse for it until you're just able to watch like something that's like totally rated R, not blink an eye. Because the nur left your heart. So you don't even feel bad when you look at it now. Right? So this is the reality of it. And I've noticed this since I've come back, here. It's very tough. Only someone who Allah really has chosen can avoid all those things. And some people, Allah has blessed them. Allah has blessed them. So I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm just trying to say, if we are, because this is a majlis of ilm, this is not a popular lecture, right? Our ilm actually tells us we have to at least be on a track to say, inshallah. If not now, then one day I will improve, right? Okay. Then the next part of the hadith. So whoever avoids the doubtful matters clears himself with regards to religion and honor. Okay, we understand with religion, right? Because if you avoid doubtful matters, how does it help you in your religion? So for example, let's say you just eat all the food that the office staff bring. And you don't check it. People bring meat, oh, it's okay. And eventually, what happens? Somebody says, oh man, that was a pork sandwich. Like, you just ended up eating. What did you do? You went from website to website to link to link. Oh my God, astaghfirullah. Why? Because, you ended up going, you end up in the haram. What does it mean, however, that whoever indulges in the doubtful, whoever saves themselves from the doubtful, then they have cleared themselves in their religion and their honor. What does that mean? What do you mean your honor? Wait, first of all, is honor even important?
Credibility.
Credibility? Okay. Is honor, let me ask you this question. Is honor something Islamic?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
It actually is. It's from the religion. So these days we think honor is like a bad thing. Having a good name. But no. It's a nice way.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
اللهم صل على محمد وصلى الله عليه سيدنا محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة والعفو والرحمة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رضي بالله ربا وبحمده صلى الله عليه وسلم رسول الله دينا اللهم إنا نسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة لنا ولكل مسلم. After you hear the adhan, you repeat after it. One of the beautiful things about being in masjid is that you can ask Allah for anything you want after the adhan. It's an accepted dua, inshallah. So ask Allah for whatever you want. So we'll stop here. We spent a lot of time on the innovation hadith because of how many ways it comes into our religion. So I apologize, I'm trying to cover 3 hadith per lesson, but sometimes we stop because there's a lot of questions and a lot of things. Just to close, and we are going to close now because we have to get down. But yeah, inshallah, we will continue. Any announcement that needs to be made? Anything you said? No? Okay, so we will see you all inshallah next week. Assalamu alaikum.